Today we are not just selling grain, we are shaping the future of Burkina Faso. This $14 billion partnership with India is proof that our land can feed the world and secure prosperity for our people.
On news screens and shook the world. Burkina Faso, a small landlocked nation in West Africa, had signed a $14 billion agreement with India to export maize and sorghum for the next 10 years. 20 million metric tons of grain would flow from African fields to Indian ports. For many, this was completely unexpected. Burkina Faso had never before been seen as a major global grain exporter. India, on the other hand, already produced massive amounts of food. Why then would such a deal happen? And why now? The questions filled newspapers, television studios, and trading floors worldwide. The response from the financial world was instant. Within minutes, grain prices rose sharply. Commodity markets in Mumbai, Chicago, and London were buzzing with nervous energy. Futures contracts for maize and sorghum jumped higher as traders scrambled to understand the impact. Agricultural analysts were rushed onto live TV. Some called it a historic shift. Others labeled it a game-changer in global food security. Rival exporters in South America and Eastern Europe were especially alarmed. For years they had dominated large grain exports to Asia. Now out of nowhere, Burkina Faso had stepped into the spotlight and claimed a piece of their market. Yet the official announcement was surprisingly short. Just 3 paragraphs. No colorful slogans, no political speeches, only clear numbers. 20 million tons of grain, $14 billion in value, 10 years of supply. Sometimes the simplest words create the loudest noise. At first glance, this was just business. Burkina Faso selling grain, India buying it. But in reality, the deal was much more than a simple trade. It represented a new strategy in how nations protect themselves from future risks. For India, the agreement was about security and stability. Its food system depends heavily on the monsoon. Good rains bring bumper harvests. Weak rains create shortages and push prices up. By importing from Burkina Faso, India was creating a safety net against unpredictable weather. For Burkina Faso, the deal was about opportunity and recognition. Until now, the country was mostly known for gold mines, cotton fields, and political struggles. But with this agreement, it showed the world another face, that of an emerging agricultural power. For the world, it was a reminder that in today's interconnected markets, even a landlocked African country could suddenly play a critical role in feeding billions of people. Such a giant agreement did not happen overnight. In fact, the seeds of this partnership were planted several years earlier, quietly and without fanfare. About 3 years ago, Burkina Faso's leaders began attending international trade and food security forums. They did not arrive with flashy promises or big advertising campaigns. Instead, they spoke carefully, explaining their country's untapped agricultural potential. Indian officials listened. They already knew that their country needed to diversify food imports. Depending on just 1 or 2 regions of the world for grain carried risks, especially when climate change was making weather more unpredictable. So when Burkina Faso offered to be a steady and long-term partner, India saw a chance worth exploring. The first talks were not about money, they were about trust. Indian trade envoys visited Burkina Faso's central plains, examined silos and met with farmers. They asked tough questions. Could the harvest be large enough? Was quality consistent? Could supply be guaranteed for 10 years? Step by step, confidence grew. Burkina Faso faced one enormous obstacle. It has no access to the sea. For any major exporter, this is a nightmare. To deliver millions of tons of grain to India, the crops would have to cross borders into neighboring countries, travel to ports, and only then be shipped across oceans. At first, many doubted whether this was even possible. Moving such huge volumes of grain through complex routes would require money, planning, and infrastructure that did not yet exist. But this problem turned into an opportunity. Both India and Burkina Faso agreed to co-invest in infrastructure. Railways were upgraded, new road networks were planned, and port storage facilities in nearby coastal nations were expanded. What once looked like an impossible barrier became a symbol of creative cooperation. By solving the logistics issue together, both nations showed that this was not just a deal on paper, it was a partnership built for the future. India is often called a grain giant. Every year it produces hundreds of millions of tons of rice, wheat, maize, and sorghum. On paper it looks self-sufficient, but the reality is more complicated. Some years, India has bumper harvests, and warehouses overflow with grain. Yet storage problems cause large amounts to rot before they ever reach people's plates. In other years, poor rainfall and weak harvests create shortages, forcing the government to import food at high prices. This boom and bust cycle makes food security in India fragile. By importing from Burkina Faso, India gains a climate advantage. Burkina Faso's rainfall patterns are different from India's. A bad monsoon in India does not necessarily mean a bad season in West Africa. This makes Burkina Faso a natural insurance policy against India's unpredictable weather. Many experts asked, why choose Burkina Faso when larger, more established exporters exist in South America or Europe? The answer lies in politics, economics and trust. Firstly, India offered more than money. In addition to buying grain, it promised to invest in Burkina Faso's agriculture, building silos, funding irrigation projects, and training farmers with modern technology. This meant that even as grain left the country, its own farming system grew stronger. Secondly, India came without heavy political conditions. Other big powers often tie trade to military or political influence. Burkina Faso wanted a partner, not a master. India's approach, framing the deal as a partnership between equals, was far more attractive. Finally, there was history. Over the past decade, smaller trade links in textiles, pharmaceuticals and machinery had already built trust between the two nations. The $14 billion deal was not the beginning of the relationship, it was the result of years of quiet cooperation. The $14 billion deal was not just about food, it was also about politics. In today's world, trade and politics are deeply connected. Nations don't only buy and sell goods, they also build alliances, strengthen friendships and create long-term influence. For India, the agreement was a way to show leadership in Africa. While China and Middle Eastern countries had already been signing agricultural contracts across the continent, India had been slower. By striking this deal with Burkina Faso, India showed it would not sit on the sidelines. It wanted to be a strong, reliable partner. For Burkina Faso, choosing India over other buyers was also a political decision. It showed the world that the country could make independent choices, not just follow traditional trade partners. It was a message that Burkina Faso was ready to take its place in the global system on its own terms. The announcement created excitement across West Africa. Neighboring countries immediately began to ask themselves, if Burkina Faso can do it, why not us? Many African nations have fertile land and the potential to grow grain for export, but they often lack the infrastructure, investment and international trust to make it happen. Burkina Faso's deal proved that with the right strategy, even a landlocked country could become a global agricultural player. In the coming years, experts expect more African nations to upgrade their ports, railways and silos. They will try to strike their own long-term deals with big buyers in Asia and the Middle East. Burkina Faso may have opened the door, but others are eager to follow. Not everyone welcomed the deal. In South America, countries like Argentina and Brazil saw it as a direct challenge to their grain exports to Asia. Eastern European exporters, especially Ukraine, also felt threatened. These nations had invested heavily in supplying India and other Asian markets. Now, a new competitor had arrived. Industry analysts predicted that global grain prices might adjust. Exporters in other regions might lower prices or offer better trade terms to keep their market share. Some even warned of a price war in the future. But in the long run, many economists said the deal was healthy for the global market. It reduced dependence on a small group of exporters and spread supply more evenly across the world, making the food system more stable. One of the most sensitive questions in Burkina Faso was simple. If we export so much grain, will our own people still have enough to eat? The government understood this concern. Food security at home could not be sacrificed for exports. So the agreement included strict rules. A fixed percentage of Burkina Faso's national grain production would be reserved for domestic use. No matter how high world prices climbed, this portion could not be sold abroad. Additionally, part of the revenue from the deal would be used to subsidize local food prices and fund new irrigation projects. The idea was to raise overall production, so there would be enough for both exports and local consumption. Whether this balance will succeed remains to be seen, but the plan shows careful thinking. Most headlines focused on human food, but there was another important angle: animal feed. Sorghum is a major ingredient for livestock and poultry feed. India's dairy and poultry industries are among the fastest growing in the world. They need a reliable, low-cost supply of feed to keep expanding. By securing long-term access to Burkina Faso's grain, India also secured the future of its milk, chicken and egg industries. This was a smart move because shortages in animal feed can quickly raise prices of everyday foods like milk and meat, creating political problems. In this way, the deal was not only about food security for people, it was also about economic stability for industries that employ millions and provide affordable protein for India's growing population. Another strength of the deal was climate diversity. India's grain production depends heavily on the monsoon. Some years too much rain floods fields. Other years too little rain leaves crops dry. Climate change is making this even less predictable. Burkina Faso's climate is very different. Its grain belt is based on another rainfall pattern. That means when India faces a bad year, Burkina Faso might still have a good harvest. By linking the two nations, the deal works as a climate insurance policy. This strategy reduces the risk of both countries facing shortages at the same time. It's a simple but powerful way to protect against the growing threat of climate change. The deal was not only about exporting grain, it was also about building capacity. India agreed to share advanced farming technology with Burkina Faso. This included modern irrigation systems, better storage solutions, and farmer training programs. For Burkina Faso's farmers, this meant more than just selling grain. It meant learning how to improve yields, reduce losses, and make farming more sustainable. These skills will remain even after the deal ends, giving the country long-term benefits. For India, helping Burkina Faso's farmers succeed ensures a steady supply of grain for years. It is a win-win situation. Farmers earn more, exports remain strong, and India gets the stability it needs. Perhaps the most exciting part of the deal was the promise of shared infrastructure development. India invested in modernizing Burkina Faso's storage silos, expanding road networks, and improving connections to coastal ports in neighboring countries. These improvements will not only help grain exports, but also benefit Burkina Faso's entire economy. Better transport means faster trade, more jobs, and new opportunities for other industries like textiles, mining, and manufacturing. In this way, the grain deal is more than just agriculture. It is a national development project. It builds roads, railways, and ports that will serve the country for decades. On a deeper level, the $14 billion deal represents a shift in the global order. For a long time, international trade was dominated by a few big players, the United States, Europe, Brazil, and China. Smaller nations were often ignored, but this deal showed that even a landlocked African country could play on the big stage if it planned carefully and built trust with the right partner. It challenged the old idea that only rich or coastal nations could dominate global trade. For India, it was also a statement. The country showed that it would not wait for others to dictate food supply. It would build its own partnerships and secure its future, even if that meant looking thousands of miles away. The Burkina Faso-India deal offers lessons for many nations. First, it shows that diversification is essential. No country should depend on just one region for its food. Climate change, war, or trade conflicts can disrupt supply at any time. Second, it shows that infrastructure matters. Without investment in railways, silos, and ports, exports cannot grow. Burkina Faso's success may inspire other African nations to improve their infrastructure to compete. Finally, it proves that partnerships of equals are possible. Instead of coming with heavy political strings, India offered fair terms, money, technology, and respect. This approach can create stronger, more sustainable friendships between nations. The deal is signed, but the journey has just begun. Over the next decade, Burkina Faso must prove it can consistently deliver grain without harming its own food supply. India must ensure that investments are completed on time and that logistics work smoothly. There will be challenges, climate shocks, price swings, political changes. But if both nations remain committed, the agreement can become a model for future trade deals worldwide. Already global organizations see it as a positive step. Diversifying food supply across continents reduces risks of global shortages. In an uncertain world, this kind of cooperation is not only smart, it is necessary. From quiet conversations at trade forums to a headline that shook global markets, the $14 billion maize and sorghum deal is far more than an exchange of goods. It is a symbol of trust, strategy, and vision. For Burkina Faso, it is a bold declaration that it will no longer be defined only by gold and cotton. It is now a rising agricultural hub. For India, it is a calculated move to protect its people and industries in an unpredictable climate. For the rest of the world, it It is proof that even the smallest nations can play a big role in global food security. In the age of interconnected markets, a deal signed in a landlocked corner of Africa can ripple across oceans and affect billions of lives. And that is exactly what happened when India and Burkina Faso shook hands on one of the largest grain deals in modern history.